Good evening from New York City. This is the Ingram Angle. I'm Pete Hegseth, in for Laura tonight. A lot of major news developments going on right now, including new details about intense, institutional, intentional pressure applied by the FBI at the highest levels to investigate the Trump campaign. New details, we're going to bring them to you. Plus, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they're getting scorched from the left over the Trump-Maxine Waters feud. But what you're not going to believe is why. And a big trade war between the U.S. and China is officially underway, or at least the first shots. They've been lobbied. But President Trump may have already won the first battle. We're going to explain that later in the program. But first, the White House doubling down in its support of ICE. Calls to abolish the agency, they're spreading like wildfire, as you know, throughout the left. And earlier today, Vice President Mike Pence became the latest administration official. When the number two comes to the defense, you know they're bringing the big guns to draw a line in the sand against the onslaught. Listen.
While I stand before you today at a time when some people are actually calling for the abolition of ICE, in this White House, let me be clear, we are with you 100%. The American people have every right to engage in peaceful protest. But these threats against ICE officers and their families must stop, and they must stop now. Under President Donald Trump, we will never abolish ICE.
It's about as strong as I've seen Mike Pence in the last year and a half, starting a hashtag, I stand with ICE. Well, Abolish ICE supporters are praying to make this a wedge issue as the midterm elections approach. But is it going to blow up in their faces, or might it work? Joining us now with reaction is Fox News contributor Rachel Campos Duffy, along with immigration attorney Francisco Hernandez and Democratic pollster and Fox News contributor Doug Schoen. Doug, you've got the home court advantage this evening here in studio, so go to you first. You say it's not a set issue that abolish ICE is good for Democrats, and that there's not much consensus here on that.
Well, I think it's a bad issue. I think it's well outside the mainstream of what the American people want. They want border enforcement. Many want a wall. The number who want open borders or to relax scrutiny of those coming in at a time of terror and illegal immigrants coming from Central America is very small. I think it's the far left and the Democratic Party hijacking effectively the mainstream narrative to the ultimate detriment, I believe, of the party if this carries on.
Interesting. Rachel, to you, there was a poll that came out from Reuters, and we're going to put it up on our screen, that showed that the most important issue currently for registered voters is immigration at 15%. Not a majority, just a plurality. Well, that's a different poll, but we'll roll with this one anyway. Look at this. Here we go. Here's the poll we want, 15%. However, for Democrats, it's only 7%. It's their highest issue. So it appears, and for Republicans, 26% of Republicans believe that it's the most important issue. So a lot of intensity on the Republican side, less so on the Democratic side. It almost feels like the far extreme of the Democrat Party is driving this abolish ICE narrative, and potentially in a really bad direction for that party.
Absolutely. Doug is right. This is abolishing ICE is well outside the mainstream, but the Democrat Party is well outside the mainstream. I live in Middle America. I'll tell you what concerns people about the border and about what's coming across the border. It's really about drugs. I mean, Pete, you're from the Midwest. Yep. You know where these forgotten communities are that are finally coming back thanks to the Trump economy, but they're still suffering because of so much drugs that are devastating our communities, devastating families. Vast majority of that's coming over the southern border. That's important to them. Let me just say 127,000 undocumented criminals were arrested by ICE last year. Almost 2,000 of those were homicides. 78,000 of those arrests were for drugs. So again, abolish ICE. What happens to those 127,000 criminal illegal immigrants?
No, it's a great point, Francisco. Yet, if you were to watch the so-called mainstream media, this was going to be Trump's Katrina. This was the zero tolerance policy at the border was going to tank his numbers. I'm going to put the poll up that we showed briefly earlier. It was the wrong one at first, but now we'll get it right. Trump's approval rating amongst Hispanics since that policy has been in place has increased by 10%, counterintuitive to coastal elites. But to Hispanics that came here legally, it's offensive to think that immigration is the only issue that matters to them. Their economy has improved, their lives are improving, and they think laws ought to matter. Does that surprise you at all that the numbers have gone up so much?
Well, why? The numbers don't matter anything. Let's keep our eye on the ball. If the president and Congress have done zero on immigration, which was promised. It was sworn to in blood
you're saying,
that it would
hold
be
on,
addressed.
Francisco, you're saying the president has done nothing, yet the entire left wing has premised its resistance on the Trump administration doing everything, doing too much with ICE, doing too much at the border.
They haven't. They haven't even gotten a single dollar to put the first brick on the border wall.
Well, that's not true.
I mean, come on, guys. They've done zero.
Wasn't there
everything
an
that's
allocation
going
in the
on
budget?
now?
Hold on, Francisco. There was an allocation in the budget. I mean, it wasn't as much as Trump supporters would want, but $1.6 billion is not chump change.
It was for repairs for the stuff that fell.
Thank goodness.
When we tried to build it in 2001. Okay, guys, we still can't even buy the property for a wall. What happened with Congress acting? What happened with the Dreamers? What happened with the immigration reform? What happened? We're going to fix this. We're in a labor shortage in this country. The worst labor shortage we've had in the last 100 years for sure. And we can't pass immigration reform. Congress is sitting there. Now we're blaming ICE. Do you guys realize how irresponsible it is to blame
those are very
ICE?
different issues.
Their agents, their lives are in danger.
That's different issues.
Francisco, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because ICE has become sort of the catch-all
so why don't we turn it
for
on
resistance to this administration.
Get off your butt. ICE is only doing what Congress told it to do.
Conflation everywhere. Doug, to your point, has the president ever had a willing partner on getting anything seriously done on immigration?
They have a majority.
Francisco, can you let someone else talk other than you? Look, I'm all for immigration reform, and I'm also for civility. And to have civility requires negotiation. You can do the wall, you can do the Dreamers, but you need compromise to do it. Francisco is right to the extent that there is nothing going on in Congress, but really, your point's exactly right, Pete. If ICE becomes the issue, Francisco, you got to give people a break.
We'll get back to you. Let Doug speak.
But if ICE becomes the proxy for immigration, A, the Democrats hurt themselves, B, there's no immigration reform, and ultimately the party could be marginalized in the midterms and going forward to 2020.
Rachel, can the Democrats overcome identity politics to be serious on this issue?
No, I mean, Pete, you brought this up at the beginning of the segment. You said, you know, the vice president speaking so strongly. There's a reason why the vice president is doubling down on what the president said earlier. His speech this week, he said, the Democrat Party wants anarchy. That is absolutely true. This is where the Democrat Party are. They are the party of socialists. They are the party of anarchy. And we have never had a president, a leader of the Republican Party with the I don't want to use the word, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
The gumption to say the truth. And it's resonating. People love law enforcement. People want rule of law, including Hispanics, which is why that poll that you mentioned earlier, up by 10%. If you live in Central America, you know exactly what happens when there is no rule of law. You know exactly what happens when you have a government that can't control its borders and can't control corruption. So, yes, this is a winning issue for the president. That is why he's doubling down on it. That is why the vice president's doubling down on it. And the Democrats are fools to go with this abolish ICE message.
Francisco, you've been chomping at the bit. Where do you want to start?
I've been chomping at the bit. We need the president to lead the Republican majority in Congress to pass some immigration reform. Did we forget the Republicans have majority in both the House and the Senate? And they're both afraid of the Democratic filibuster. Let them filibuster. Let them show the other side of that coin. Let them show the double
what's
face.
What's the other side of the coin, Francisco? What's the other side of the coin they're going to show? Is it open borders? Is it amnesty without reciprocation of a wall? They don't want a wall. They don't want merit-based immigration.
1 year. Single employment permits, renewable year to year. Make them sure they're paying that taxes. They're not committing crimes. They are fully employed and paying taxes and off of welfare. Year to year, renewable cards, work permits.
Year to year,
if there's no job, they don't get the stay.
I'm for that. I'm for immigration reform, and I'm a Democrat. I'm not an anarchist. There is a civil wing of the Democratic Party that's rational.
Where are
Doug
you?
Jones,
Other than you, Doug.
I'm right here.
Rachel,
I'm with you today.
That's the question a host should ask. But where's the leadership on this?
Well, that's the problem. We don't have vocal leadership.
That's right.
Connor Lamb won a congressional race. Doug Jones won in Alabama. There are centrists, But it's sadly the case we don't have leadership to compromise, to do what Francisco wants to do, which is to get comprehensive immigration reform, get the border done, get guest workers, and get a pathway to citizenship
But you
for
don't
the
need
dreamers.
compromise. You have a majority. Republicans have a majority. You don't need compromise.
Of course you need.
We're a
Francisco,
country.
That's a
We're
straw
one
man
nation.
argument. That's a straw man argument. You know you need to beat a filibuster in the Senate, so ultimately you need something
That's
that
right.
Democrats would ever vote for,
Show
and they're not
decide.
going to. Rachel,
Let 'em
give us the
filibuster.
last word on this.
I would just say thanks to the very radical turn and the freedom that they have now to expose themselves as the radicals they are on the Democrat side. I think we may finally get that majority we need in the Senate during this midterm. I don't think this is going to be a blue wave at all. I think these kinds of positions that the Democrats are taking are going to lead us to get the majority we need to pass the 4 pillars that Donald Trump wants to
Rachel,
solve immigration,
I
especially
think
help
you're
out
right.
the
In a
kids.
common sense America where there's still enough common sense amongst the electorate, if the issue is immigration,
That's
if the
right.
economy's going well, and then the other
That's
issue
right.
is immigration, you've got I stand with ICE versus abolish ICE. I want borders versus open borders. I just feel like that cuts in the president's direction. But all of you, thank you very
the
much.
Republicans are behind by about 9 points in recent polls. The Democrats have a
see.
chance if and only if it's a big if.
They were behind
centrists like
also
me
when
emerge.
President Trump won.
All those Doug Schoen centrists are somehow gonna
Absolutely.
show up at the
Come
polls
join me.
on election day.
Come join
A
me.
lot of them
Thank
are
you all.
becoming
You guys-
Republicans.
Yes, a lot of them are becoming
They are,
Republicans. Great
sadly.
point, Rachel. Thank you all very much
Thank
for your
you.
time tonight. We appreciate it. Fiery debate. Well, coming up next, newly released memos. They're raising new questions about major FBI pressure, institutional pressure, intentional pressure to investigate the Trump campaign. The new details you're not going to want to miss coming up next.